I made an agenda for today's spaces to give a little bit of structure. I think we should first begin by asking Manu if you could do a little introduction to this whole concept of talks with Sato, and then we can move on to a little short introduction by Max on the Money on Chain platform. And then I would like to talk about the backstory of how the platform came to be what it is today, the philosophy behind it. And if we have some time, we can finish by the plans for the future that you both have. And throughout the whole spaces, I want the audience, if they have any questions, if they have anything that they would like to know, they can either comment and I can ask that question to either one of you, or if they want to request the microphone to ask their question themselves, that would be great as well. So if that's okay, I think, Manu, if you want to start with a little introduction of Talks with Sato, that would be perfect.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Thomas. The idea about Talks with Sato is an idea of the badgers of, Money on Chain now is a decentralized protocol. We are the founders that built the protocols. Originally, we are Bitcoiners. Money on Chain is progressing each time more to be as much decentralized as possible. So we are our Spanish account in Twitter, the community account is already for several months, nearly years, being a community-driven account. And now what we are building is more we want to build the community also in English. We are fairly well known in Latin America, especially in Argentina, where most of the founders are from. But we are not very well known in English, in the English community. The idea is to start building these Twitter spaces to talk about what we are interested in, that is Bitcoin, and mainly on what Bitcoiners are building on top of Bitcoin, mainly on Bitcoin layers 2. So talks with Sato are going to be Twitter spaces to talk about protocols, stuff being built on top of Bitcoin layer 1. Sometimes could be about Bitcoin layer 1. It could be about philosophy of Bitcoin. It could be about whatever any Bitcoiner is interested. And it will be hosted by Money on Chain community, which is one of the protocols that is building some stuff on top of Rooftop mainly. But it's a community-driven Twitter space that also is going to have a podcast. So if Bitcoiners want to listen afterwards, this Twitter spaces is going to be recorded and published as a podcast. Main idea again is to build community, to share ideas, to talk about things that we are interested in. And the idea is mainly to do it each week on Tuesday, 17 hours Argentine time, but depends where you are. If, for example, you are in Australia, I think right now it's like 6 o'clock in Australia. Thomas?
Yes. Today I woke up a little bit earlier, but this space is what was worth it.
Yes. So, and again, it's a community-driven space. So if you want to talk about something in particular, just you should propose the subject. You can write to the Money on Chain OK account, or connect in the Twitter account in the Telegram account in English, and propose what to talk, what would you like to talk about. If you know a new project, a new protocol, a new initiative, because there is many new protocols and new stuff that are being built, and a lot of this stuff are not well known. Actually, by myself, I don't know a lot of projects that are being built. I imagine all the Bitcoin happens the same. So it's like a space to talk about these things that we are interested in.
Perfect. That's a perfect introduction. And yes, it seems like now more than ever there's more and more things being developed on Bitcoin, and it's hard to keep track. But it also makes it a very, very exciting time to be involved in the Bitcoin space. I will also ask people that if you have any particular guest that you would like us to invite to the spaces, please share them with us as well, because that will help us create better spaces and better experience for all of you as well. And before I move to Max, I wanted to ask a very simple question that I know is very simple, but because this is our first space, I think it would be a good idea to explain it. Who is Sato?
Sato is a pet that we invented that maybe it represents, it depends. Everyone maybe has a different idea of what is Sato. For me, it's a community of Bitcoiners trying to build some stuff on top of Bitcoin, building new things. So for me, Sato is a pet. Also, is ourselves. Maybe is also the badger. That is a badger. So you know how Bitcoiners, some Bitcoiners identify themselves. I identify a lot with that, and seems other people also especially in money on chain users, but also not the users. So for me, it's a badger, and it represents the money on chain community, which is also a Bitcoiner community.
Yes, because there was a voting that the community did to name our mascot, and Sato was the winner. I mean, in Spanish we have charlas con Sato, which is talks with Sato, and now we're expanding into the English-speaking community as well. So with that introduction, Max, I would like to give you the microphone so you can explain a little bit to people what money on chain is, in case they find this recording later and they don't know about the protocol already. I think it will be good to establish first what it actually is.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Well, basically, money on chain is the first Bitcoin collateralized stablecoin protocol. So the idea behind money on chain is to have a stablecoin that inherits the immutability and decentralization from Bitcoin, and at the same time to provide a way for Bitcoiners to earn more sats, providing liquidity to the protocol and making the stablecoin that uses Bitcoin as collateral a reality. So basically, the protocol has 3 tokens. The first one is a stablecoin that is pegged to the US dollar, and the collateral is 100% Bitcoin. The second token is called 𝑀𝒶𝓃. Is like a Bitcoin, but with a little bit of leverage. That means that when the price of Bitcoin goes up, the price of 𝑀𝒶𝓃 goes up a little bit more. And the third token is the 𝑀OC token, that is a governance token for the protocol. It's the token that allows the voting process to take place in a decentralized way.
I think that is the best way and the most concise way. So that's a perfect introduction to begin the spaces. So the first question that I had, or it's not a question, the topic that I would like to delve into, and this can be either for Manu or for Max, depending on who wishes to answer first, is to go into the backstory of the protocol, because Money on Chain is very unique in the way it works. There is no other protocol like Money on Chain. So I want to know how it came about, what were the influences, and what were the early days when you were discussing the idea, and how you took the idea and actually build the platform itself. I am fascinated by that. So I would like to know more.
Well, we built Money on Chain, or we start Money on Chain, the idea of Money on Chain, because it was a need for us as Bitcoin. I am involved with Bitcoin since, I don't know, early. I start acting actively in the community since early 2013. And back in those days, they were very common that the only way for people to get away from volatility was leaving dollars in an exchange, and the process to transfer dollars in an exchange to a bank account was almost impossible. And the hacks in the exchange were happening every month or every other month. So the necessity to have a stable coin, a decentralized stable coin, was pretty evident for us. I remember the launch of Tether. Tether was a wonderful solution, but immediately after the launch of Tether, we realized the problems with decentralization, that you would depend in banks and financial systems and people taking care of the dollars that are behind those stablecoins. So we started to think about how can we create a stablecoin that uses Bitcoin as collateral. And we tried, I don't know, dozens of ideas and models and protocols. And I remember one time we had the BitPro had another name. It was 𝒌𝟏. It was called 𝒌𝟏. It worked differently, not exactly like today. So Manuel asked, is this a token that you would buy? And I said, no, definitely no. So we start over again, and we created we designed the BitPro as our dream token. So we said, what I would like the BitPro to be, well, that is exactly how we designed the protocol. So basically, the protocol was designed by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners to cover the Bitcoiners' needs, to allow the normal people, I don't know, users, enterprise, to use the Bitcoin network, or to use the Bitcoin in a stable way or in a decentralized way.
Okay, that's perfect. Yes, and I will agree that sometimes I look at BitPro and it does seem like the dream token. So I think that if you set up to create that, I think it was very successful. I wanted to ask about because you mentioned that there was a need for the stablecoin, and that Tether was helpful, but it was not exactly what you were looking for, and that what kept you trying to create something different. And I am still very intrigued on how the structure of Money on Chain came about. So what were your early influences? What other protocols besides Tether were you looking at? If you can elaborate a little bit on that. I would love to know.
Well, when we started working in money on chain, there were no stablecoin protocols. When we started with money on chain, MakerDAO didn't exist. I remember two stablecoin protocols two protocols failed. One was called 𝑈𝑠𝑒𝑓, I think. It has a dollar that it was called $, but that wasn't on a blockchain. It was a it was something like 𝓝𝓸𝓼𝓽𝓻, like the way they were trying to handle 𝓝𝓸𝓼𝓽𝓻 at the end with the foundation and a treasury. But it was a protocol like that. So definitely that protocol was not an influence on how to do things. Actually, it was an influence about how do not do things. And the other protocol that we knew when we started working with money on chain was a stablecoin protocol that was running on BitShares. But it was almost the same. There were no, we thought that protocol wasn't a good idea. That protocol was ultimately meant to fail, and that exactly that happened in the end. I think that BitShare collapsed when we were starting with money on chain. So we didn't take influence from other protocols. We start researching and trying an error and making simulations and deducting formulas and proving mathematically the concepts. It was a lot of work. At the end, we came up with this protocol, but we didn't fork, neither we took any idea from other protocols. Even the governance token was a fresh idea, a new idea in that time. In that time, people wasn't thinking about governance token. At that time, it was the first ICO era in 2017. So people was minting and creating tokens with no value and no function. I think that was something revolutionary about money on chain, that we create a token that was very important in the protocol. It's a token that assures that you are going to have decentralization. And sometimes people ask, well, why don't you use the 𝒃_PRO as a governance? So why don't you give the governance to the people holding the collateral in the protocol? Well, the problem with that approach is that when you start a protocol and the protocol is small, probably you have less than $1 million in the protocol, anyone can come to the protocol and lock enough collateral to attack the protocol. So that is why using the 𝒃_PRO as a governance token was not a good idea.
That is very interesting. I never thought of using 𝒃_PRO as the governance token. And it's very interesting that you were already thinking of a governance token when it was not the norm for a protocol to have it. And now it seems like every protocol has a governance token. So you were very ahead of the curve there, and in many ways. One of the things that you mentioned is that you did a lot of experimentation and testing, and there was a lot of math involved in the equation. And one of the things that people always tell me when they read the money on chain white paper is that they love how you can see all the formulas there, and it makes sense, which a lot of protocols, they tell a beautiful story, but there is not that work behind it that actually makes the protocol function as it should and make it successful. So I want to ask Manu to join you in the conversation. How was it when Manu told you these ideas that he had, and what was your reaction, and how did you both went from idea to actually implementing?
Well, it was tough. Actually, I didn't understand very well about Bitcoin, much less about the idea of building a stablecoin. I had a click with Bitcoin and the protocol when I was working in my whole life. I was working before in multinationals and using fiat and bank accounts. And when we started to build the Manual Chain, I needed to make a payment abroad, and I couldn't use my bank account that I was holding since I was, 18 years old. So when it wasn't in current Argentine government. It was maybe more liberal government than the actual one, and really realizing that I was not able to use my money in such an simple transaction that I needed to do. I need to pay something in the United States with my money in Argentina. I realized how important was first Bitcoin, and then as it was in my early days in Bitcoin, I was so afraid of the Bitcoin volatility, not understanding the Bitcoin volatility, not understanding how the price moves or I think it moves. I realized that when I understood Bitcoin, I understood that having something like Bitcoin, but stable in the time in dollars terms, I thought I immediately understood that was something important. And actually, at that moment, Tether was the market of Tether. It was like $1,500 million. So it was very small. The stablecoin market or concept was, most people were not talking about stablecoin in the crypto world, in the Bitcoin world. Tether was very early there. So I understood that building a stablecoin, but with some properties like Bitcoin would be something important. But really, you need to have a lot of imagination, because what we know now as DeFi world didn't exist. The DeFi term didn't exist, actually. It was a concept that was developed in 2019, 2020. So I thought that building a stablecoin completely decentralized was something that could be very important for humanity, especially for people living in countries like Argentina, like Zimbabwe, like Lebanon, like Turkey, and maybe for truckers in Canada, for human rights. And if trying to build that, being able to build that, if we succeed, because when we started, I didn't know if this was possible. Actually, most people were telling us, you are crazy, totally crazy. It's impossible to build a stablecoin using Bitcoin as collateral. So I thought that if we succeed to do this, to build this, and this works, well, this is going to be something that maybe is going to be useful for a lot of people in the world, and it's something interesting to be involved, to spend some time working, and that's really my main reason why how we started. It was something that we thought, and actually I think it's important for humanity in general. Not only Manual Chain, but just what we are building with Bitcoin, what we are building on trust minimized solutions for humanity. If we don't build these solutions, the alternative is to use a completely centralized financial system, which much less freedom for all. So what we are building, I think, is important for not only for us, but for our kids, for our family, for our friends, for humanity in general.
Yes, no, that's very, very true. And anybody that has known the flaws in our traditional financial system, I think can also attest to that. One thing that I wanted to touch on, because both you and Max spoke about how being in Argentina made it very obvious for both of you that we needed these kinds of solutions and we needed this kind of innovation. And one thing that I noticed, because I've been living in Australia for the last 6 years now, is that here, that is not so much the case, because the financial system here kind of works for most people. And I am seeing that a lot of innovation, like for example, Rootstock, right? Money on Chain is working on Rootstock, and Rootstock got started in Argentina as well. And Money on Chain was born in Argentina as well. So I just wanted to see if you guys have any comments on this, like necessity being the mother of invention, like is often said, and the role that played in creating Money on Chain.
Regarding a stablecoin like the dollar on chain, yes. A stablecoin in general and DeFi in general is you can make a lot of money, and you have a lot of financial advantages, and that advantages would be useful anywhere in the world. Actually, I think most of the money in DeFi is from institutional investors or early or some most big holders are from the developed world, because you can do leverage operation, you can operate in money markets without restrictions, and there is a lot of opportunity that you can make. But of course, if you are talking about a censorship-resistant stablecoin, it makes much more sense, that kind of solution, for someone living in Lebanon, in Venezuela, in Zimbabwe. When I talk, I have friends now, virtual friends, because I never met with them. But when I talk with Bitcoiners living in those kind of those countries, they immediately understand the need of a censorship-resistant stablecoin, or on a stablecoin that you can hold and nobody can steal. Nobody can take you away. So yes, I think Bitcoin in general, censorship-resistant solutions, trust minimized solutions are very important especially for people living in places where the risk of not having sound institutions, of not having civil rights is important.
Yes. So to me, it's no wonder that we're seeing a lot of this innovation coming from places like Argentina, where there is a lot of very talented people, a lot of very smart people, and there is a lot of need for these kinds of solutions. I wanted to ask Max if you can talk a little bit, because one of the things that I think that makes Money on Chain really, really great is the connection between the BPRO and the dog holders, and how it's attracting two different kinds of people that have different objectives, and allows them to collaborate even though they don't need to know each other, they don't need to trust each other, but they can collaborate and they can each get what they want, and both end up better from that collaboration process. So I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that. I think that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, that was the idea when we create the protocol. So basically, the Donegal chain needs the BitPro in order to exist, because the BitPro is a token that allows the over-collateralization and that allows the Donegal chain to be stable. And at the same time, the people holding the Donegal chain, the people who need stability, transfers the potential gains of the Bitcoin they were holding to the BitPro holder. So at the end of the day, the BitPro earns a little bit more when the price of Bitcoin goes up, and the Donegal chain has no volatility. And what is interesting is that you a few seconds ago, you said, well, people in Argentina immediately understand why the Donegal chain is needed. But in countries like Australia, we have financial institutions that works well, so we don't need something like the Donegal chain. And that is true, and that is something that we thought about when we designed the project. So probably in Australia, you don't need the Donegal chain because you can trust your financial institution. But in Australia, you probably are going to be interested in the BitPro because it will allow you to earn a passive income or a little bit of free leverage in your Bitcoin. So that works in that sense also. Probably some guy in Argentina will be way more interested in the Donegal chain because it allows them to hold dollars and to not risk the dollars in the local financial system, and that allows people in first world countries to bet if the price of Bitcoins going up.
Yes, Manu, please.
Yes, I also want to mention that sometimes I'm quite surprised about how a lot of people that are using stablecoin don't realize about the differences about a completely centralized solution like USDC, Tether, whatever stablecoin that you are using, and the Donegal chain. Because even if for most of the Bitcoiners using stablecoins is important censorship resistance, decentralization, and blah blah blah. At the same time, I think most of coiners are mainly using Tether and completely centralized solutions. So sometimes easy to use and just having on central exchange, having very easy access to the solution prevails in user acceptance. So in a way, it is important, but I don't know how much important at the end is for a lot of users. It's something that I question myself. At the beginning, actually, when we were talking with Max, when we were building this, the assumption that we had is that the demand for Donegal chain will be infinite. And actually, maybe we are not communicating very well, and maybe it's our problem. But the demand for Donegal chain up to now is much lower from my point of view of what I expected. Always there is a possibility of minting much more Donegal chain than the total availability in the protocol. There is always dollars that can be minted. And the demand for vPro is huge. So maybe when I asked that question to Max in the early days about how should be the vPro for Bitcoiners to use it, we succeeded a lot on that because the demand for vPro is very, very high. But something is missing on the dollar chain. And that's a question that sometimes I make myself. I don't know, Max, if you see the same or not.
It needs time for people to install. I remember when we started working in this protocol that people used to tell me, nobody cares if the protocol is decentralized. Nobody cares if the protocol is secure. And I always said, security is important, decentralization is important, the stability of the protocol is important. And when things went wrong last year, when 𝓝𝑸𝓼𝓽𝓻 collapses and some other stablecoin lose the peg, the dollar on chain keep value 1-to-1 as always. And in that moment, I realized that we were right. Decentralization is important, security is important, and all these aspects that we take a lot of time and effort to build a protocol that will last, I don't know, several hundred years, are important. And at the end of the day, people will realize the day after tomorrow, something is going to happen with one of these centralized coins, and people will understand that decentralization is important.
Yes, I think you're 100% correct. I think it's almost like decentralization doesn't matter until it matters. And when it matters, you better have it, because if not, you are in trouble, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like I sleep a lot easier knowing that I have docs there that nobody can prevent me from using. And when I need to send money to my family back and forth, it's much, much easier to use something like Doc than having to go through the traditional system. So, yep.
I have heard hundreds of times people telling me, you should take a look about what Celsius is doing. You should take a look about 𝓝𝑸𝓼𝓽 is doing. 𝓝𝑸𝓼𝓽 is fantastic. Oh, but BlockFi there is nothing better than BlockFi. You won't exist because BlockFi and Celsius and 𝓝𝑸𝓼𝓽 will kill you. And you know what? Celsius, 𝓝𝑸𝓼𝓽, and BlockFi are not here. And Mayan Chain is a decentralized protocol that is here and will be here no matter if I still here.
Yeah, that's very, very powerful, because we often forget, but many of the protocols that were labeled to be this amazing thing, they're no longer with us. And the people that were in those protocols when that happened, those were the ones that had to pay the price. Now we're 43 minutes in, and I want to encourage people to ask any questions if they want. And I would like to start about the steps that Money on Chain has taken into becoming more decentralized over time. I know there were some big moments relatively recently. So if we can elaborate a little bit on that, and then on the future plans for the protocol, I think that would be a great way to start closing the spaces.
Okay. Well, regarding decentralization, the protocol is not 100% decentralized, but is decentralized enough. There are a couple of centralized things still, but there are minor things that are not really important. if you want to make an important change in the protocol, whatever change, not important, whatever change you want to make in the protocol, you have to go to a voting process and you have to get the approval of the mock holders to make the upgrade to go through. There is no way to upgrade the protocol. There is no point of centralization there. The only things that are the same with the web app. The web app is decentralized, is running on top of IPFS. That means that there is no proprietary server involved there. So the only point of centralization that exists today is a panic button that can be disabled whatever the mock holders want. The key of that panic button is in the hands of the foundation. So if something very wrong happened with the protocol, the founders has the ability to stop the protocol. But we cannot make any change in the protocol. So we decide to stop the protocol. What users can do is just vote to suppose that we became evil and we want to destroy Manion Chain, and we decide to use our panic button and press the panic button and stop the protocol. Well, what users can do is just to vote to disable our authorization to handle the panic button and start the protocol again. And the other point of centralization that still exists is the rewards to the BPRO holders. The protocol mints and recollects those MOC tokens every month and send those tokens to the foundation. And there is an automator in the foundation that handles the request of the MOC of the BPRO holders. That is also not big amount of MOC token holders that the foundation is handling for that. So the protocol is fair enough decentralized today. And the next step in decentralization is, of course, removing those 2 points of centralization that still exist.
Yes, I think it's very common for these kinds of projects. They have to start very centralized with the initial team having the ability to work on the protocol and develop it. And ideally, they would grow more decentralized as time goes by. And I think that the Manion Chain protocol has been doing that very quite successfully. And if you look at the history, you can see a clear path towards more and more decentralization.
Exactly. Yes, this protocol started 100% centralized. I remember the first deploy on 2019. We had a multi-sig account, and with that multi-sig account, we had ability to do whatever we need to do in the protocol. Of course, that is the case anymore. Now you have to vote every change in the protocol.
Yes, Manu, do you want to something?
Yes, only to clarify, just in case, is the panic button, the only thing that makes is that nobody can mint nor redeem the tokens. If you have dollar on chain or BPRO or any token, or any that token is the mock token, you will be able to sell it in any decentralized or centralized exchange or exchange peer-to-peer. But it's only disabling the minting and the redeeming of the token. And it's to prevent any kind of attack. And again, it's important to clarify that is something that MOC token holders can vote to take away. And it's like the last emergency thing that only because we are super paranoid about security. but we hope we never need to use it.
Well, I think if you're going to be paranoid about something, being paranoid about security is not a bad idea. I just wanted to touch on what are the things that you're working on, or where do you see Money on Chain developing or growing? And again, I encourage everyone in the audience, if you have any questions, now would be the time to ask, because we're getting closer to the hour mark. So what is the future for Money on Chain?
Well, I would like to see adoption increase in Money on Chain. We are not actively developing anything in Money on Chain right now. We think that Money on Chain is fine as it is. I remember in the past we had like a huge roadmap of derivatives and things that we wanted to do on Money on Chain. But like 1 year ago, we realized that all those ideas that we have of derivative lending, etc., are great ideas, but to build on top of Money on Chain and not on Money on Chain. So now we want to keep the protocol as simple and robust as possible. That is why last year we proposed and voted on removing the BTCX, because the BTCX was a wonderful tool, but was something that was making the protocol very difficult for the people to understand. So we removed the BTCX, and now we feel very comfortable with the protocol. We are working in another protocol right now. 𝒔 the foundation that designed Money on Chain. We are working in another project that is called 𝒝𝓃𝓏. And 𝒝𝓃𝓏 will create a set of stablecoin nominated in local currencies. And that will allow the access of normal people using the local currency to access DeFi tools. So, for example, you will be able to lend Argentinian pesos or Colombian pesos in a lending market similar to Compound, and a high interest that the bank would pay you. The same applies to take a loan. You will be able to take a loan paying a lower interest rate than the bank. So our focus right now is in 𝒝𝓃𝓏. We will have two flavors of 𝒝𝓃𝓏. One flavor that will be Bitcoin only. That means that the collateral of 𝒝𝓃𝓏 will be dollar on chain. And another flavor that will accept USDT and USDC as collateral.
Okay, that is very interesting, and I can definitely see a use case for that. Like if you are living in Argentina and you're using a DeFi tool and you're getting a loan out, and that loan is valued in American dollars, it puts you in a very challenging position, because your pay is always going down against the dollar. So your loan is always harder and harder to repay. So I can see that as an important tool to have. And I really like what you said, that money not being actively developed as much, because I do see like the protocol has matured in a way that it really doesn't need anything else. It just works the way it's intended to work. And I think that's great. Yeah. It's not one of those protocols that constantly needs to come up with a new thing and tweak this and tweak that. It just works.
Yes. We are building 𝒝𝓃𝓏 with the same mathematical model of Money on Chain. So later, if the mock holders want to upgrade the mock protocol to become multi-peg, so for example, we'll be able to have a dollar on chain or an euro on chain and a yuan on chain, etc., they will be able to do it. But probably that is not something that we're going to impose. The option will be there if the community wants to do it. We are going to do it. But again, we like the robustness of the protocol as is today.
Yes, no, I can agree 100%. I wanted to ask, will 𝒶𝓸𝓼 have any benefit for the mock holders?
Yes. Some of the governance token of the 𝒶𝓸𝓼 protocol is called FLIP. And there will be an airdrop to mock holders since the 𝒶𝓸𝓼 is based in the money on chain protocol, and the money on chain protocol belongs to the 𝑀𝒂𝓃 token holders. So there will be an airdrop for the 𝑀𝒂𝓃 token holders, of course.
Oh, those are wonderful news. I don't know if either of you have a closing statement, because we're getting close to the hour, and then we have the famous final question from the Talk with Sato that I will ask after.
No, just to close, decentralization is important, and collateral is important.
Perfectly well said. Manu, do you have any closing statement?
No, I agree, and I'm very happy that the decision on the roadmap of money on chain belongs to the 𝒂𝓃 token holders. If someone wants to propose something, to change something, to do whatever they want with the protocol, is something that we cannot impose changes. If we think about something to change with Max or the other co-founders, we will propose those changes. And sometimes we have it's more changes that we might propose, but I think is this way of making it simple is the best. It's the best thing for certification and for security for the protocol. If it works, don't try to fix it.
Yes, very well said. So now we're gonna start to close with the famous question asked specifically to you two, but I will also encourage anyone that is listening, if they have their own answer, they can put it into the comments. And the question is, what would you ask Satoshi Nakamoto if you met him, or what would you say to him?
Oh, I wouldn't ask anything, but I would say thank you.
I think that's probably the best answer I've heard so far. Manu?
Yes, I don't want to be cliche, but it's like, yes, I'm so thankful to Satoshi. It's like, especially again, as we said before, people living in countries like Argentina, having a technology like Bitcoin is like something so much important that it's only thanks. That's the most important thing to say. I have some questions, but it's not important. It's not important. Maybe I will keep moving.
Sure. What are those questions?
Let us know.
The main question is what you are going to do with the 1 million sats. You lost the key, or you burn it? The 1 million that you hold. I think is that thing might be important, but it's important in the short term. In the long term, it doesn't matter actually, and it's more like something is anecdotal. It's not really important. Yes. Maybe, and from my point of view, also Satoshi, I really think I don't know if it was one person. I think it was many people, not only one people. So it's like money on chain is not one people. It's many people that built a protocol. And one thing is what started being Bitcoin, and another thing is what is Bitcoin now. So sometimes when we say we are all Satoshi, I really think that we are all Satoshi. Actually, Bitcoin is more like a social thing that we build together. Is maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 cyberpunks started the movement, but now it exists because thousands of people are building and using this technology, and this like sociological political movement. It's more like that for me.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, whenever someone asks me, what would you ask Satoshi, I always say, I would ask for the key to his 1 million Bitcoins. So before we close, we have one question from Legosi. So Legosi is asking, are we focusing more on getting applications within Rootstock to integrate with Doc, or mostly preferred to use Doc in the physical world?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I think that, well, both things are interesting, but we created Money on Chain thinking about real people. But if people want to play with dollar on chain and playing, I'm referring to DeFi. If you want to make DeFi and with dollar on chain and all strange things, that is okay with us. But we create the dollar on chain to help real people in countries like Venezuela, Argentina, Colombia, etc.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the beauty of permissionless protocol is that anyone can use it for whatever they prefer to do. So I think this has been a great first talks with Sato, and I invite everyone that has been in the audience to join us next week. We're gonna bring another set of guests, and we will continue these conversations. And again, if you have any specific topic or any specific guest that you would like to suggest to us, please get in touch. Either send a message to the Money on Chain Twitter account, or you can join our Telegram group or the Discord server, and we can continue the conversations there. So Manu and Max, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. People join next page is going to be great. I cannot still reconfirm the speakers, but I think it's going to be historic. So stay tuned.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a great rest of your day, morning, afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.